George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Iran in the last hour has militarized the Straits of Hormuz as fears grow that Donald Trump intends to fire low-yield nuclear weapons to destroy Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. At least they were peaceful until the danger of an Israeli attack upon Iran heightened dramatically over the last couple of years. Year and a half to be precise. And Britain is in a state of war with Russia and the United States of America. What could possibly go wrong? And the German magazine Bild says that German youth will have to accept the fact that they will, in the near future, be at war with Russia. What could possibly go wrong there? Oh, we actually know what could possibly go wrong there. There's much more coming up over the next 2 hours because this is the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
And there's war in the Reform Party in British politics. International viewers may not have much of a handle on this, but in the time-honoured fashion of such people, the Reform bandwagon is coming off its wheels as two of the discarded former senior lieutenants of the founder and leader Nigel Farage prepare to form a new party which may or may not have big bucks behind it from Elon Musk, the man that rules the internet, at least for now. More of that later, but bigger and more important things must occupy us in this opening monologue. In the last hour, Iran has quote-unquote militarized the Straits of Hormuz, through which fully 40% of the world's petroleum is exported. And without that oil trade, the economies of the Western world would grind quickly to a halt. Forget about expensive petrol at the pumps. There wouldn't be any petrol at all. So a matter of some moment. What is the proximate reason for it? Well, it is the growing conviction that having moved a second aircraft carrier into the Persian Gulf and listened carefully to what Donald Trump says and doesn't say, the Iranians believe that the attack upon them will come not from Israel, which is, of course, superbly vulnerable to counter-attack, as Iran showed twice over the last year and a half, but from the United States itself. The big enchilada is coming. That's what the Iranians believe. And it's not helped by Scott Ritter, the one and only Scott Ritter, who in somewhat peculiar post in the last few minutes has laid out what would be Donald Trump's case for doing so. He says that it has no relevance that Israel has nuclear weapons. Well, that depends what end of the telescope you're looking through. Because if you're Iranian and you're being openly threatened by a country which illegally holds hundreds of nuclear weapons, it is highly relevant indeed. Scott Ritter explains, and we're grateful to him for it, that the United States has low-yield nuclear weapons. I don't know what a low-yield nuclear weapon looks like. Is it Hiroshima or somewhere between Hiroshima and the 1,000 times greater nuclear power of today's nuclear warheads? Maybe 500, would that be low yield? Maybe 100. That would be, therefore, 100 times more powerful than the bomb at Hiroshima. And moreover, Scott argues that this would be necessary if Trump were to achieve his objective of destroying Iran's nuclear reactors, if it was to destroy Iran's peaceful nuclear industry. I've called it that twice now for a reason. The IAEA and those policing the NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran is a signatory to, has been since the time of the Shah, have never reported that Iran was seeking to build nuclear weapons. The Iranian political leadership has repeatedly said that they will not build nuclear weapons. And indeed, there is an outstanding extant fatwa from Khomeini himself that it would be irreligious, blasphemous, to produce nuclear weapons, which are weapons unlimited by time or space. And that would appear not to be good enough for the Trump administration. They believe that Iran is seeking to build a nuclear weapon. I have said many times, I'm going to say it again now, whether you like it or not, if I was leading Iran, I would long ago have furnished myself with a nuclear weapon. Given that I'm being threatened daily, sanctioned, strangled, and warned as to the very existence of my state by not one but two nuclear-armed states, Israel and the United States of America. So I don't know why Iran doesn't want nuclear weapons. I can't be certain that they still do not want them. I can't be certain that they do not even now have them, given that experts say the state of uranium enrichment in Iran is such that within a few days they could put a nuclear warhead on the tip. What I do know is that if the United States bombs Iran with low-yield nuclear weapons, then World War III is a distinct probability, because the Iranians will not take that lying down. Their ballistic missile capability, and for that matter, their anti-aircraft capability, which is largely Russian in origin and state-of-the-art, is more than enough to close the Straits of Hormuz, militarized in just the last hour. It's more than enough to completely destroy the oil and gas installations of all of America's allies in the Persian Gulf. And if you were Iran, you'd do exactly the same. After all, America cannot attack Iran. Israel has not been able to attack Iran except by using the airspace, the waterways, and in the case of Qatar at least, but probably Saudi Arabia also, and the massive American military bases on the soil of Iran's neighbors in the Persian Gulf. So if you were the Iranians, you'd do the same. And I'm certain that they will. That means there'll be no oil or gas to transport through the Straits of Hormuz, because the Saudi fields, the Qatari fields, the fields of the United Arab Emirates would all be destroyed in an instant. All of their oil and gas infrastructure would be destroyed, and indeed much else. I've said to you many times, don't buy a property in Dubai, because Dubai will not exist if America attacks Iran. In other words, we're talking a very, very serious development. The question is the United States going to launch an attack on Iran, knowing, as they must, all of the foregoing, all that I have just adumbrated as the necessary and ineluctable consequences of such an attack? And then there's Israel. It's unlikely that in its retaliatory posture that the Iranians would not strike Israel. After all, they did so with absolute ease twice over the course of the latest Gaza emergency. Over the last year and a half, Tel Aviv and other parts of Israel have been hit by highly combustible ballistic missiles from Iran, which did not have anything like the warhead tip on it that it could have had, and they were fired in very small numbers. If Iran were to let go all of its arsenal with its maximum explosive warhead potential, then Israel too would cease to exist. It would be another Dubai. Given the seriousness of all this, you must be asking yourself, has the world gone mad? Have the leaders of the West gone mad? Well, judging by European performance over the last few weeks, yes, I'm afraid they have. Britain and Germany are effectively now in a state of war with the nuclear-armed superpower with 5,850 nuclear warheads, a country called Russia. The state of war is now moving rapidly to a deployment. The active phase, as Keir Starmer put it, the operational phase, as Keir Starmer put it, is now upon us. That means to say that Britain is about to send troops to Ukraine. This despite the warning from Russia that this would be a declaration of war against them. This despite the obvious that with one single Orishnik missile, non-nuclear, the entire British expeditionary force could be wiped out. It would be very much greater a military setback than it happened in the charge of the Light Brigade. It would be very much more serious than almost anything that the British Armed Forces have faced ever, never mind since the Second World War. Because Keir Starmer says he will respond to any act against British troops in Ukraine with the potential use of British nuclear weapons. Now, there are a number of problems associated with that. First of all, as many technical reports have made clear, Britain does not have operational control over its nuclear weapons. It would have to have the permission and the cooperation of the United States to fire its nuclear weapons at Russia. The British government were boasting this week that they could take out 40 Russian cities. Although that's not true, because as soon as the first Russian city was taken out by British nuclear weapons, Britain would cease to exist. And so the braggadocio of the Starmer government, accused this week by General Kellogg of being in the grip of the worst case of pound shop Churchill impersonation since doughboy Boris Johnson. Keir Starmer is a joke, according to General Kellogg, President Trump's representative on the Russian front. But as soon as we had taken out one Russian city, every single British city would literally cease to exist. That's the balance of power that exists between Britain and Russia, and yet the British government persists in the most nakedly aggressive way to threaten Russia, including to threaten it with nuclear weapons. Well, I am not privy to the thinking in the Kremlin, but I imagine it goes something like this. This Chihuahua, Keir Starmer, just threatened 40 Russian cities with nuclear attack. We better get ready to preemptively stop any possibility of that happening. And so, the reality is that Keir Starmer, who presides over a sinking economy, a society that is ripping itself apart, that cannot agree on anything, which is cold, wet, miserable, and getting poorer and poorer, and going to get much poorer still, according to Keir Starmer. By 2030, every family in Britain will be worse off. Hey, vote for me, I'll make you worse off, said no successful political party ever. The reality is that Britain is outstripped only by Germany in its preparations for war with Russia. Now, the new, or soon-to-be new, German Chancellor has told the German people that they must now spend 800 billion euros more, 800 billion euros more. That's the best part of €1 trillion on weapons of war and preparations for war with Russia. That's the Russia that only 2 years ago was supplying Germany, and had been for decades, with cheap and dependable gas on which their entire industrial and economic strength was built. The German magazine, close to the Prime Minister, new Prime Minister, Chancellor of Germany, warned Germany's youth today that they must be prepared to go to war with Russia. Well, we don't know what might go wrong, because Britain never fought Russia in the nuclear age, not since the 1850s and the Crimean War, but the Germans fought Russia very much more recently than that. Indeed, in the lifetime of some of the people watching this show this very evening. And it did not end well for them. And again, while not privy to thinking in the Kremlin, if I were in the Kremlin, this is what I'd be saying. We made a serious mistake in allowing the reunification of Germany. We made a very serious mistake in allowing our forces to be forced out of the eastern part of Germany. We made a very serious mistake in not ensuring that the verbal promises of the Americans that NATO would not advance 1 inch to the east if we agreed to leave Germany and tear down that wall. We made a very serious set of mistakes with Germany, and we are going to have to prepare for that war that the German government is absolutely determined upon. In other news, Israel continues to massacre Palestinians, massacre them in their thousands. In 51 minutes, 300 Palestinian children were murdered in tents in Gaza this week. I'm telling you that because, well, nobody else will. You have never seen that statistic that I just gave you on any Western newspaper, in any Western television or radio broadcast. It's as if it never happened. Except those of us who know and saw it happening. We saw the parade of limbless and headless children. We saw the fathers laying their babies and infants in the cold earth. We saw the women torn to pieces. We saw the old men hacked to death by razor-sharp steel that fell upon them from American airplanes with devastating ferocity. And we can't unsee it, you see. We can't accept that it can happen without even a murmur of protest from a political class that is actually preparing for war of its own. And so, I've got to declare my own little war. My war against the Uni party in Britain, which is now bigger than two cheeks. It's an arse that is an anatomical miracle. It's an arse with 4 cheeks, actually 5 cheeks. The arse with 5 cheeks is the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Reform Party, and the Scottish Nationalists, who all support the war that's coming with Ukraine, and who all support the war on the Palestinian refugees in Gaza. And so, even if I stand alone, and I do not, but even were I to stand alone, my state of war with those silently complicit in some cases nakedly complicit with the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, an ongoing Holocaust, is total. It's total war from me, ladies and gentlemen. It's the mother of all talk shows.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As Fisher says, the Twitter sphere where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, here's the poll for this evening. My goodness, it's going big. 26,433 of you have voted already. Has Trump made the world a safer place? Yes or no? You can answer, cast your vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, please subscribe to my channel and give the show your thumbs up and share it with all of your friends and contacts. And if you want to call the show, it's toll free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the UK and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Afshin Rattansi, my good friend and colleague, is the host of the best show anywhere on air. It's going underground. It's simply a must-watch. Some of you were able to watch it with ease in years gone by. Now you have to try a little bit harder, but you must try. Because if you're not watching Going Underground, you ain't as informed as you're going to need to be. Afshin, welcome back, as it were, to the mother of all talk shows. I'm sorry to tell you that you're in the middle of all of these crises that I adumbrated in my monologue. Let's start with the one closest. In the last hour, Iran has announced it is militarizing the Straits of Hormuz. It has moved weapons and weapons delivery systems to the coast, to the mouth of the Straits. It looks like they think that Donald Trump is going to attack them. Scott Ritter makes the point in a very long contribution he's just posted that strike, if it happens, will have to be a nuclear one, albeit, and he names the systems, low-yield nuclear weapons. Very reassuring where you're sitting right now. Do you think any of this is going to happen, and what the consequences will be if it does?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read Scott's piece, and yeah, that's the Persian Gulf in the balcony behind me. So listening to your monologue, as millions do by the numbers of MOATS these days, I'm presumably not in a safe place. But I got to say, and actually just before hitting on this point about where I am, Dubai, I should just say on Gaza, because that is where the minds of people in this region are. With you gave out the numbers. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz said, well, with the largest number of children killed in as short an amount of time as possible. I should just say, before I get onto the threat here in this region, that all your trade unions in Britain, trade unions that you and I actually have marched against with on banners, ASLEF, CWU, the FBU, GMB, all these big trade unions in Britain that are affiliated. Unite, is that still affiliated? USDOR, Shop Workers Union in Britain?
Yeah.
They're all complicit in genocide because they are the ones who are taking the funds from the poorest workers who pay into a union to represent them. And those unions are paying in to a British Labour Party that is absolutely complicit. We know from the valuable work at Declassified, the way that there are more British RAF planes, reconnaissance planes over Gaza than there are Israelis. All those trade unions are better disaffiliate quickly, and I'm sure you'd want them to affiliate with the Workers' Party of Great Britain because, it's in this region, it's affected. The idea that so many are being killed this week, and in fact, and this relates to your question, there was a meeting just this week between UAE and Iranian foreign ministers. I know the UAE has a base, an American base here in this country up the road in Abu Dhabi. And it says, I mean, this was the readout, that both are very concerned over the fatal Israeli strikes and the strikes on Yemen. The UAE has a position where it is always trying to balance both powers, all the different powers, off of each other. I think the UAE thinks of itself as placing itself now between Iran and the United States in a sense. I mean, I spoke to Sheikh Mohammed himself about 25 years ago, the ruler of Dubai, who said about previous U.S. administrations, they just wanted peace. The UAE wants peace and commerce here. But the latest is Anwar Gagash, the presidential advisor in the UAE, diplomatic advisor to MBZ in Abu Dhabi. From a glass half full perspective, we can see that the areas of cooperation are way bigger than the areas of disagreement with Iran. So where does that place Trump, who loves the UAE, of course, loves these GCC countries, loves Saudi Arabia? I don't know why he loves them so much. It puts him in a very strange position. I mean, on Monday's Going Underground, we talked to an ally of some of these MAGA-type people, and he says there's no way Trump wants a war with Iran. But then we come back, as we do with Gaza, to the role of Miriam Adelson, the Maccabees project, which is now stopping the First Amendment at university campuses. Israel, of course, has a huge deal of power, the Israel lobby. These are Israeli. Miriam Adelson's NGOs are changing American policy. They're a foreign agent changing American policy. But Trump doesn't want a war with Iran because he knows, so I am told, that he knows that whatever he does in the world, whether it be peace in Europe, stopping nuclear war, the biggest issue of our time, it'll be overshadowed by any war with Iran.
Indeed so. All sanity points in the direction of no war with Iran. A vast country, huge territory, with powerful, close allies, Russia, China, and with a hinterland of Islamic world support, particularly, obviously, amongst Shiites throughout the region and the world. Iran is powerfully armed. Its weapons are now in great demand. People are queuing up to buy its weapons. It has the potential of fielding millions of soldiers who don't care if they die, as the Iraqi army found out when the Iraqis invaded Iran in the 1980s. It's a very tough nut to crack, which is why they won't almost certainly invade it. But if Scott's right, then they're going to bomb the nuclear facilities. And Iran will treat that, won't it, exactly as if the Marines had waded ashore.
No, Iran definitely would. And it should be noted, though, that the latest strikes on Yemen down the road are Britain even was very quick to say, hey, we didn't have anything to do with that. Similarly, it was the use of USS warships in the Persian Gulf and in the Red Sea. They were the ones, and were indeed attacked by Ansar Allah of Yemen in return. No word here whether anything was really used from the bases in Saudi Arabia and in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. So you can see, and I think the even Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, would see, of course, Tucker Carlson. I mean, this is a media president, very strong the other day with Witkoff, the negotiator, who seems to be ruling out things with Hamas. We know Tucker Carlson's view that Iran would just derail the Trump plan. This is the deep state, as revealed in the JFK papers that came out this week, very alive and kicking, that would want Trump to do this. If Israel were to do this, and if they were to do this unilaterally, yeah, of course it would put Trump in a strange position. I mean, I listened to another awful book by Michael Wolff that I still had to read for purposes of journalism, where presumably it angered Trump that Wolff revealed that Trump was hugely bored by Miriam Adelson, the Zionist casino billionaire widow who wants a war with Iran explicitly. So is he bored of those people on that side? Does Rubio care? We have to look at that close circle around Trump to think what would happen. Previously, people have said Trump doesn't get on with Netanyahu, so he would be presumably angered by such a unilateral decision. And so we hear, of course, we don't have anything in writing about it. This is the longest phone call between a Russian and American leader in history earlier this week, was it? Between Putin and Trump, and Putin saying, absolutely not. Do not attack Iran. And we should add, just in the past few days, behind me, down there in the Persian Gulf, there were naval drills organized between Iran and China and Russia, with the UAE as an observer status. Now, given all of these elements to the story, sure, Netanyahu could do something, but he would then finally, presumably, lose all support from the United States. What Iran would then do?
Well, let's go
Iran,
to
very conservative.
Let's go to the Eastern Front. Let's go to the Eastern Front, Afshin. General Kellogg making good mood music. The telephone call to which you referred seems to have gone well. Certainly, it's hard to believe a phone call that lasted that long could have gone badly. I wouldn't stay on the phone for 3 hours with someone if it was going badly. But the Europeans are the wild card, aren't they? Germany is practically declaring war on Russia, and Keir Starmer's defense secretary, a little man called John Healey, the most unlikely war leader in all history, trust me, I've been up close and personal with him. Kellogg said that Starmer was trying to be Churchill, rather unconvincingly for most people. But the British Defense Secretary threatened Russia that if they took any action against the interpolation of British forces into Western Ukraine, that there would be very severe consequences. And they then queued up the British media to show pictures of our nuclear subs and the weapons that they have. And this figure of 40 Russian cities came up. So British-inspired reportage is saying that Britain could and would be prepared to destroy 40 Russian cities with nuclear weapons. Did you ever imagine that it would come to this? That the Americans and the Russians would be trying to make peace with each other, and these little poodles like Macron, little chihuahuas like Starmer, German Dachshunds like Merz would be doing as much as they are doing to derail peace?
Yeah, apart from our personal experience of these types of people and our surprise that they're acting this way. I mean, I shared a panel with Keir Starmer and, you mentioned John Healey, these people promoted by Jeremy Corbyn, it should be said, your friend, in their day. I mean, in the past few minutes, it's come out that Steve Witkoff, the US envoy, has commented. I'm not sure directly about this yet another bizarre threat from this persecutor of Julian Assange, Keir Starmer. Trump envoy dismisses Starmer plan for Ukraine in the genocidal pedophile broadcast of the BBC that I used to work at. Even the BBC reporting that it should be dismissed as a posture and a pose, Steve Witkoff has said in the past few hours. They despise Britain, don't they? The British elite power in Washington do, or at least the Trump administration. Nevertheless, as you say, the scale of the budget being spent by the Germans, it's $1 trillion extra budget, and I don't know exactly how much the rearmament is. That is going to put a spanner in the works. I mean, one can laugh about Britain with its impoverished society, 1.2 million people who are disabled now facing horrific cuts. Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson never did it. It's the British Labour Party that are going to cut their disability benefits for the war on Russia. For all that, this does alter the circumstances of any peace deal, doesn't it, from Moscow's viewpoint? And it should be added that horrific pictures, thanks to Elon Musk's X, are coming from the Eastern Front. Zelensky is sending in young women to be slaughtered and, of course, broke and violated the terms of the agreement with Trump. Horrific pictures of what's happening to young Ukrainians in the past few hours. And now with this kind of talk from these, as I call them, the rump Western European nations of Eurasia, seeming to think they live in a different century, not sure what time they live in, their minds destroyed by the history books that are allowed to be printed in Western Europe, the Hollywood films, the culture in which they inhabit. Putin surely would now have to think very carefully about any deal with the United States over a neutral Ukraine, because some kind of a disarmament or some kind of element of these EU NATO nations might have to be brought into it, further complicating the problems that need to be surmounted to get peace.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, you could have a deal between Trump and Putin, which demilitarizes, reduces the level of troops to 87,000 or so is the number that's been mentioned. You could have a deal that the United States will not go on supplying weapons of war to any rump Ukrainian state. But if the Europeans are still on a war footing, then that is no guarantee at all for Russian security. So that's actually an invitation to Russia to take over the whole place, isn't it?
Yeah. In fairness, I had to smile with the war footing because, of course, in Britain, the most busy airport in Europe, while you are on a war footing. We're on a war footing in Britain. 300,000 passengers thrown out by a substation electrical fault or fire in West London. Difficult to be in a war footing, arguably, against the largest country on earth with the largest number of nuclear weapons if you can't even run an airport properly. Of course, Germany does pose a bigger problem in a sense. I suppose the Trump administration would say to Moscow, look, that even with our nuclear weapons that are in Ramstein, maybe they have to go back. Even with the 12,000 US soldiers occupying Britain at the moment, which is never talked about in the press, even without the how many tens of thousands of American troops are occupying Germany at the moment. I mean, of course, they might return. That would be a goodwill gesture from Trump. Moscow can still destroy all the major cities of Britain, Germany, and France pretty instantaneously. So therefore, they have that advantage, regardless of the crazy amounts of money now being portioned out to buy, presumably American military infrastructure from Lockheed, Boeing, and Raytheon and Northrop Grumman, which Trump obviously wants, and therefore actually Putin shouldn't worry too much about it. In any case, maybe they have double key systems like the poor British Trident deterrent, which can't be fired without Trump's say so.
Finally, and it's a tender subject, I know, new footage and new allegations of truly horrific mass murder sprees in Syria. The US, NATO, UK backed Islamist fanatics, the Takfiris of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, have received now very substantial sums from the British government, 40 million handed over, no strings attached, and the European Union, I think 5 billion euros handed over with no strings attached. Indeed, Anna Baerbock was on Syrian TV the other day, and they pixelated her face so that you could not see her. It would be unbecoming, of course, for the Syrian people to look upon a woman politician who'd just written them a check for billions of euros. Nobody's going to do anything about this, are they? And therefore the Christian and Alawite and other minorities in Syria appear to be being shot like fish in a barrel, although, it's much more horrific than that. I just saw a video of wounded Syrian army soldiers in their hospital beds being sprayed with bullets as they lay there in their beds, killed in cold blood. These massacres, this death cult of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, it's out of control and nobody wants to control it. Am I right?
Yeah. That EU foreign policy chief's face was pixelated because the person who's been put in power in Damascus ran ISIS and Al-Qaeda, obviously. Some of the estimates of the numbers that have been killed, of course, we've got to remember that NATO European media is not free. It is a complete mouthpiece of the deep state. And gosh, we know about the deep state from those JFK files that were released. We know how appalling they are and why they're not covering what you're just mentioning. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Did Dan Kovalik just tweet something about tens of thousands are already the number of dead? And of course, these
40,000
women and children. I have no substantiated figure on that. All we can hope for as regards a way to neutralize the NATO European countries and Britain, as I said, cutting a disability benefit by handing over, you said 40 million, maybe 50 million, $60 million to this ISIS Al-Qaeda cult in Damascus. All we can hope for really is that and Tulsi Gabbard in the past has spoken about the fake chemical weapons attacks in Syria used by the United States and Britain and France to bomb Syria in the past. All we can hope is, and Trump hasn't relaxed the sanctions on the Syrian government. I noticed at the State Department in the past 48 hours taking questions, no new words on that, is that the United States definitely does not see the regime in Damascus the way Brussels, Paris, Berlin, and London do. In which case, too many balls for Trump to juggle at the same time. Clearly Ukraine is the one that he's most focused on, and that is the most important issue in the world because it relates to nuclear war, thermonuclear world war. Nevertheless, can he not realize that his Christian base are worried if he can't sympathize with the Alawites and other minorities and Sunni Muslims being slaughtered by weaponry kind of funded by Baerbock and Starmer in Britain? Can he not sympathize with the slaughter of Christians in a country which has the first ever church? Hopefully there are voices in that Trump administration telling him urgently that time can't wait now. All the Christians will be wiped out.
Finally, Afshin, because I said you were at the centre, geographically and otherwise, of all of these stories, and your commentary on it is eagerly sought. Erdogan looks like he's in a bit of trouble in Turkey, doesn't he? Karma is a bitch, as they say.
You know, I'm not sure how the media there in Britain and in Western European nations covers this fellow NATO country, Turkey, and how it's facing grave instability. Some have, of course, commented that so soon after Assad fled to Moscow, what an irony that Turkey, which was the one of the big belligerents, one of the big Washington proxies as well, used to destroy the multicultural, multi-layered Syria that used to exist, now being defamed on a daily basis in probably award-winning documentaries in NATO nations. What will happen to Turkey? Normally, you know, he's a tough guy, Erdogan, and he's gone through this in the past. I mean, we remember the coup attempt, was it 20 years ago now, is it? 15 years ago? He has a lot of support. He'll have the support of the Trump administration, which has been in talks about selling him more bizarre weaponry. Trump already announcing some boondoggle X-57 new plane, which will cost a fortune and waste more money that could go on the poor in Turkey. So because he has that explicit backing of the United States, one could presume that he lives in a nexus of NATO, the United States, with closer ties, perhaps, with BRICS. So he'll still be able to weather the storm. But you're right. You know, countries go just like a flash now. We live in that kind of age, don't we, where suddenly what's expected can just disappear at a moment. But so far, even all these mass demonstrations, his attempts at destroying the opposition, must remember Western European countries don't care about that at all, do they? People imprisoning their opposition.
They did it in Romania.
Well, exactly.
They did exactly the same thing in Romania themselves.
Yeah, probably want to do it in Serbia
always
too now.
A pleasure. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So.
Thanks, George.
Very nice to see you again, and thanks very much for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Has Trump made the world a safer place, yes or no? That's the poll this evening. Quick break, then it's your calls right up to the hour. Stay tuned.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to Edinburgh, why wouldn't we, where Kenneth wants to talk about Donald Trump. Kenneth, welcome.
Hiya, thank you very much for taking my call, George. Most appreciated. Welcome. I spoke to you a few weeks ago.
Thank you.
That for Trump to try and make out he's going to turn Canada into the 51st state is absolutely ridiculous. Really, just a load of crap. And Elon Musk is very dangerous, a dangerous man. And also the Palestinian people. I feel sorry for the guys who had a hard time, badly persecuted because of Israel. And that has to come to an end. It is wrong. That is wrong.
Well, Kenneth, all I can say is reports this evening that Donald Trump is close to securing Greenland as the 51st state, although it'll probably not get statehood. It'll probably be like Puerto Rico and kept as a kind of backyard of the United States. In any case, there's only 50,000 people live there. Eskimos, as people my age call them, Inuits, as you're supposed to call them. And that's a small enough number to spread some US largesse and effectively purchase Greenland, bypassing Denmark, the NATO ally of the United States, which is so paralyzed with fear it can only yelp at Russia rather than the United States, which is about to take a very substantial part of its sovereign territory. So he's succeeded, it would appear. There's 2 American delegations headed there next week, and they are briefing in Washington that they are confident that Greenland is about to fall into their lap. Trump will therefore have extended the territory of the United States very considerably, because Greenland is one big land, that is for sure. He's already achieved his goal in Panama, where the puppet president there has acquiesced to the frankly ridiculous Trump claim that China was controlling the Panama Canal. In fact, China owned warehouses on either side of the canal that ships going through the canal often used. It never controlled the Panama Canal, but in any case, the puppet president of Panama has forced the Chinese companies who owned those warehouses to sell up to BlackRock, you guessed it. So I wouldn't be as sure as you that he will not succeed in getting his hands on Canada. Who's going to stop him? King Charles? Thanks, Kenneth. Comments, you can leave comments on YouTube, scanning the QR code now on the corner of your screen, and we'll try and get through them. Gary Proctor says, I don't know what happened to Ritter. He's become a Trump apologist and thinks it's okay to send a threatening letter to a religious leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, like he's the Pope. I don't really agree with that. There is a change in Scott Ritter's tone over the last week or 2 weeks. His comments about the massacre of Mutla Ridge, the highway of death in the Iraq war of 1990-91, that sat very uncomfortably with me, for sure, as does his commentary tonight about Iran. But what he says he's doing, and I think we have to give him the benefit of the doubt, is soberly analysing what is likely to happen. That does not mean he endorses it happening. Indeed, an attack on Iran he explicitly opposes. The use of nuclear weapons, low yield or not, he explicitly opposes. So I think you're being way too hard on Scott Ritter in this regard. After all, we don't pay him, but if we paid him, we'd be paying him for his expertise, wouldn't we? And all he's doing is giving us the benefit of his expertise. Matthew Wren says Iran probably doesn't need nuclear weapons, because if they want a nuclear explosion, all they have to do is fire their weapons at their enemies' nuclear weapons. And Gary Proctor says, with Scott Ritter being turned over by the CIA to the dark side, threatening Ayatollah Ali Khamenei with nukes is so demonic that I have to concede Ritter is now a CIA asset. Well, as I've just said, I categorically reject that. Lucid says Trump has made World War III less likely to happen by opening talks with Russia. Now he has to shut down weapons in Ukraine for true peace to happen. And Extra Media 01 says their war against ISIS was a sham. Now it's given the state of Syria. The West is shameless and despicable. Online 2 from Blackpool is a regular caller and wise lady. Deborah in Blackpool on Starmer. Go ahead, Deborah.
Hi, George. I'm just so infuriated, George. Honest to God, my head is twatted. Excuse my language. But as you predicted, I think Starmer is actually the bigger cheek of the Tory ass, or backside, should I say, excuse my language again. But I'm just so devastated, George, honestly. You know, I've written to my MP over the Palestinian situation and got the usual reply, you know, the two-state solution crap as usual.
Now, where is it? I wish they'd show us this two-state solution, Debs.
Well, there's no... It's just words to them, George. You know what I mean? They don't care. You know what I mean? They're on Israel's side. They're not interested. There's maybe a handful.
No, well, as I said in my monologue, I'm in a state of war with all of them, not just Labour, though Labour's betrayal is the most important because they're in power, but all of them, from Farage to the nationalists, the Liberals, all. We've got a rubber stamp parliament. I mean, talk about a one-party state. 97 or 98% of the parliament is united in war. You really couldn't make it up. So we don't have seats in the parliament, but we have the attention of millions, and we intend to make war on them. Thank you, Deborah in Blackpool. A big thanks to this week's top donors on the new website, MOATS.tv. Priscilla Karam-Tovar, Rob Halsey, Carl Foreman, Stephen Bragg, and Owen Bulmer. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your generosity in the past week. But nobody should leave tonight without going to the website and leaving a donation of at least £1, $1, €1. It's merely the click of a button. There's the website, moats.tv. We'll not be able to continue with 2 shows per week. And frankly, we could do with more than 2 shows per week, given the speed and seriousness of the great issues as they unfold. Has Trump made the world a safer place? Almost 30,000 people have voted, and it's quite a varied result so far. I'll announce it later, but you may want to have your say. Has Trump made the world a safer place? Yes or no? You can vote on Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Coming up right after the break is the Rose of Texas, the one and only Rachel Blevins, journalist and political commentator, and judging by social media, quite a favourite of quite a few of our regular viewers. Don't miss Rachel Blevins, American journalist and political commentator, coming up right after this short break. Stay tuned.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
He had that Clinton thing. His eyes were round and big and smiley, and he was very charming.
He became this incredible pop idol kind of prime minister.
I think most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am.
New Labour was backed by the most powerful media interests because they realised he was representing them.
He was caught red-handed trading policy in return for hard cash from a businessman.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
Both Bush as well as Tony Blair are now wanting to plunge the world into a holocaust.
JP Morgan paid him off for the Iraq war. The man is a war criminal.
Is Tony Blair a war criminal? In my opinion, yes.
Most definitely.
The pursuit of money has become the dominant theme in your life.
all these relationships are, in most people's estimation, corrupt relationships.
No previous Labour Prime Minister has behaved in this shameful, money-grubbing way.
How do you sleep at night? You know, it's that. It's as a person.
Has Trump made the world a safer place? Whew. That poll is rocketing. Please make sure you get your vote in. Now, the podcast is also rocketing. We're in the top 30 in Italy this week, in South Africa, in Mexico, and in the UAE, where they will have heard me talking about their country just half an hour ago. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now, and you can listen to the weekly podcast via the moats.tv website. And once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review and rate it too. It helps to grow the podcast. Now, Rachel Blevins is one of my favorite voices from America, and I'm glad to say she joins us now. Rachel, it's all happening as it always is on the international scene, and we will turn to that. But I'm wondering if you could enlighten us on what's happening at home. One reads that there are protests and demonstrations and pussy hats and pots being banged and people blocking roads and people burning Teslas in car showrooms. Particularly stupid thing to do because Elon Musk's already been paid for any Tesla that's in a showroom. It's the poor guy that owns the showroom that's bearing the loss of that. One reads, and it may be propaganda, that there's a rising tide of opposition to Trump at home. Is that your sense of it?
Well, I'm always happy to join you, George. And you know, it's an interesting thing what's happening right now, especially when you compare it to where we were during Donald Trump's first term in office, right? Because you saw these mass protests in Washington, D.C. around the time of his inauguration the first time around. And you saw these increasing clashes that just kind of continued throughout his first 4 years. I feel like the position that we're in this time around is a little bit different. And part of that comes from the fact that you had such a strong mandate for Trump in the 2024 election. So while, yes, of course, you do have opposition, that opposition feels a bit scattered this time around, right? Democrats are a bit in disarray. They're looking at 2024, and some of them are going, what in the world did we do? We knew that we could not win with Kamala Harris, and others are still, I guess, believing or maybe trying to figure out what in the world happened. And the fact that you've seen some of these protests really hone in on Teslas or Tesla showrooms, to me, has just seemed ridiculous, right? I mean, yes, Elon Musk is always by Trump's side. In some ways, he almost kind of feels like the co-president that none of us Americans elected, but he's there. And exactly as you noted, you're not hurting Elon Musk when you're targeting Teslas. In fact, you're bringing more media attention to the Tesla brand and to how popular it is here in this country, which is kind of ironic because it was the Biden administration, after all, that really wanted to make that transition to electric cars. So I think we're kind of in this weird point at this moment where, yes, you have Democrats trying to figure out how do we proceed. You've got, AOC and Bernie Sanders now holding rallies together, trying to figure out what in the world they're going to do in 2028. But you also have Republicans in this position of trying to figure out, okay, how do we trust Trump on foreign policy? And I know this is something that you've been covering as we're looking at Trump and going, okay, this is the guy who he campaigned on peace in the Middle East. He campaigned on ending the war in Ukraine. Is he trying to pursue talks with Russia? Absolutely. Is he ending the war in 24 hours? No, not exactly. And then when you look at the Middle East, not only is he continuing to do Israel's bidding there, but on top of that, he's also bombing Yemen, getting us back to the brink of waging war against Iran. This is not peace in the Middle East. And so I think even as you have Democrats in a position where they're kind of confused, you also have a lot of Republicans looking around and going, okay, is there any way to actually stop this, to bring us back from the brink? Just because it's not World War III against Russia doesn't mean it couldn't soon be World War III against Iran.
Donald Trump is the least convincing Jesus freak since Russell Brand. The idea that Donald Trump is a religious man is for the birds. But he could do himself a lot of good by airlifting the beleaguered Christians out of Syria, for example, where they are presently being massacred. I don't know if that has occurred to him or any of the Christians that are always laying on hands on him. Just en passant. But I did see the Beauty and the Beast show, AOC and Bernie Sanders. You can make up your own mind which was Beauty and which was the Beast. Are they a serious contenders for the Democratic nomination? Some people were saying that was the dream team, that was the ticket. What do you think of that?
At this present moment, I don't see it in 2028, but I feel like a lot of that is because I want to say they're too polarizing. They're also still establishment figures in all of the quote unquote right ways. It seems like the Democratic Party is looking at the current landscape and they're kind of going, okay, do we go someone like AOC, someone who is going to be polarizing? I think they needed to learn from Kamala Harris. I still do not think that the American people are ready to have a woman president. They're just not. And on top of that, they also are not ready for this ticket that if the DNC decides to throw that one at them, but then you look at the landscape and you go, okay, who is it going to be? Gavin Newsom? He's also pretty polarizing, right? A lot of Americans look at what he has done to the state of California and they go, I do not want him to do that to the rest of my country. So I think the Democrats are in for a bit of an identity crisis right now. And one of the big reasons why is because after this term in office, they're not going to have Donald Trump to campaign against anymore, which means their platform can't be, but insert name here is not Donald Trump. And whoever goes after Trump, whether it's J.D. Vance, whether it's someone else, they can say, oh, that's someone who's just like Trump, but it's not Donald Trump. And you and I both know that that is going to have a major impact on what the Democrats decide to do. And I'm also curious, too. I mean, we're only 2 months into Trump's second term, but you look at where he is, you look at what he campaigned on, and I'm really wondering where things are going to be headed for the U.S. economy, for U.S. foreign policy, and what this country is going to look like, because as we know, a lot can change in just 4 years.
Well, the price of eggs is down. That much we can agree on. It became the litmus test over the last few weeks that you couldn't get eggs for less than $10 a box. I was going to say there's only one Donald Trump, but in fact there's two. And Donald Trump Jr. May very well fancy his chances of succeeding his father, so they might not be throwing away these placards yet. I'm thinking that the Democrats would be better to go for a polarizing figure because their bland offerings over the last couple of elections have so comprehensively failed. But that's your affair. What about the release of the JFK files? I personally found them, and I've read 1,500 pages, I personally found them a bit of a damp squib. What about you?
Yeah, now I will say I did not read 1,500 pages of them, but from what I saw, yeah, it did not seem like there was much there beyond what we already knew. And that doesn't come as much of a surprise, right? We should note that when it comes to the Trump administration, yes, he's going to campaign on releasing the JFK files, releasing the Epstein client list, and on and on and on. But when it comes to what he actually does, this was about par for the course. And all of the hype around it came as the Trump administration was bombing Yemen, right? As they were threatening war with Iran, and you had Trump in this position where he's getting on Truth Social and declaring to the world that, oh, we're going to treat every action that is taken by Ansar Allah in Yemen as if it was directed by Tehran. That is very serious, very concerning rhetoric. The American people who voted for peace, or at least that's what they thought that they were voting for with Trump, they did not vote for him to bomb Yemen, right? They did not vote for him to kill dozens, hundreds of civilians in Yemen using their hard-earned tax dollars in order to do it. And yet, why is he doing that? Did Yemen attack the United States? Did they harm us in some way? No, they reinstated a blockade on Israel-linked ships in the Red Sea because Israel reinstated a blockade on humanitarian aid going into Gaza. And I think that when you look at someone like Donald Trump, as much progress as he does or does not make when it comes to dialogue with Russia, pursuing normalization with Russia, pursuing an end to the war in Ukraine, the part where you have to stop with him always comes from his undying support for Israel, his willingness to do Israel's bidding no matter the cost. And plenty of people in his base support that, but you also have a lot of Americans that don't, and that have been sitting around calling Biden Genocide Joe for nearly a year and a half now. And now they're starting to look at Trump and they go, wait a second, you gave us this nice ceasefire deal in Gaza for a couple of months, but now Israel is back to bombing and killing Palestinian children, and they're using the weapons that they got from the U.S., from the Trump administration in particular, as it was fast-tracking nearly $3 billion in arms for Israel. So I think that's one of those things that Trump and that his supporters are going to have to contend with, that in some ways he may be looking like he's taking on the establishment, but that business as usual when it comes to Israel is also being seen largely as business as usual when it comes to something like the JFK files, where we get some more information, but we do not get any, from what we've seen so far, major bombshells that are going to, we should also add, lead to any accountability within the U.S. government, because that's what really needs to be happening right now.
Yeah, well, there was a big song and dance made, and justifiably perhaps, in the appointments of Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence and of Kashpatel as the head of the FBI. Any sign of an early impact of their work so far?
Well, unfortunately, the answer is no. And unfortunately for Tulsi Gabbard, she has proven to be a bit frustrating to watch, right? Tulsi Gabbard was the one who was calling out Trump directly back in 2018, right? She was calling him out for, let's just say, doing the bidding of Saudi Arabia, to put it nicely, not the word that she actually used. But she was calling him out. She was calling out the U.S. for being complicit in bombing Yemen at the time, for carrying out what was then the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Well, now we have reports that Tulsi Gabbard is calling on other countries around the world to join the U.S. in putting pressure on Yemen, putting pressure on the Houthis to get them to stop their blockade on Israel-linked ships, for, again, Israel's blockade on the Palestinian people. So that's been one of those updates regarding Tulsi Gabbard that has been incredibly frustrating to watch. And I look at her and I go, okay, is this what we're going to see from her for the next 4 years? Because that is not what the American people wanted. As you said there, you know, when we thought that we were getting Tulsi Gabbard as the director of national intelligence, we thought we were getting someone who was going to take on the U.S. establishment, who was going to be in Trump's ear with accurate information, preventing things like the Trump administration going forward with bombing Yemen and killing civilians there. So I am a little bit concerned at the moment. She could turn it around. We could see things change. But as of right now, she seems to, from everything that we're seeing, be doing more business as usual.
And Patel at the FBI, they said that there was going to be mass resignations from the FBI. And I know nothing about the man, but was that understandable, and has any of that happened?
Yeah, I have not been following that too closely, honestly, when it comes to the state of the FBI and where things stand there. I know that there have been a lot of reports about Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge, if you will, and that has kind of been going around Washington and wreaking havoc. And I'm very curious to see how it's going to handle things, and how Kashpatel, too, is going to handle things when it comes to the FBI and also when it comes to the Pentagon, because those are two really big entities in Washington where you look at them and you go, okay, if you want to talk about accountability and transparency, these are two main places that you need to start. And granted, yes, we are only just 2 months into Trump's second term, but I think a lot is going to be determined based on how Trump, based on how Elon Musk and Doge and Kashpatel as well handle those institutes and entities within the U.S. government that are known as sort of the deep state, right? That are known for carrying out this business as usual, whether it's doing Israel's bidding, whether it's trying to wage war against China or continuing this proxy war against Russia. We haven't seen too much evidence that Trump is really going to challenge things and change the narrative there, but who knows? That could change. Again, we're just early on into that 4-year term.
Yeah, I mean, let's turn to the international then, Rach. On one level, Trump has acted in a revolutionary way, reinstating the hotlines, reinstating diplomatic relations and so on. But as somebody once said, Bill Clinton, I think, where's the beef? So far, there isn't actually any beef. And Trump's allies, Britain, Germany, the NATO countries, they've gone off the reservation and declared endless war against Russia. And Trump hasn't done anything to try and bring them into line, almost as if he's quite happy for a hard cop, soft cop routine to be developed. But he hasn't allowed the reopening, for example, of RT in America, even though it's flatly illegal to ban it in the way that they did. It's an absolute breach of the First Amendment rights of the journalists that were working on RT America. He hasn't brought it back, even though Ben Swan is doing his best to cajole him into doing so. He hasn't met Putin yet or announced a meeting date with Putin. He's designated, with the best will in the world, I can't say any higher than this, that he's designated a relatively mediocre mediator, General Kellogg, a man he himself sidelined only a couple of weeks ago. It's as if they're soft pedaling and maybe drawing out the period of the rapprochement. It certainly isn't, I'll get the war over in 24 hours, is it?
It is not. And I think, when you look at the Trump administration and the way that they're handling this, we have to remember that Trump's defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, when he went to that meeting of the Ukraine Contact Defense Group last month, he sat there and he told his European allies, we need you to step up the responsibility with Ukraine and to carry out this proxy war against Russia because we want to focus on China, right? We want to look over here. We're done with handling Russia. We need you to do that. Well, Russia's watching all of this, right? They're aware of everything that the Trump administration is saying. And I think that when it comes to, the talks that we're seeing between the U.S. and Russia, yes, of course, Russia's looking at this and they're looking at the Trump administration. They're going, why is it that 1 week you pull the military aid for Ukraine, you pull the intelligence sharing, you say that you want to put pressure on Zelensky, and then a week later, when you're in a position of, getting Zelensky to say that he would agree to a 30-day ceasefire, all of a sudden you do a 180 and you give all of that back. But on the other side, we also have to remember that Russia is not in a position of wanting to agree to a ceasefire immediately, wanting to agree to any kind of a peace deal at this point, because they have yet to see anything from the West to show them that the West can be trusted. I mean, yes, Trump is talking about dialogue. He's saying he wants to end the war. But if he's still providing that military aid and that intelligence sharing to Kiev, then he is still in a position of making it so that his administration is complicit in this proxy war against Russia. And so even as we kind of have this back and forth, we had the updates like the news of a limited ceasefire on the targeting of energy infrastructure, and we say, okay, it feels like we're making progress. We also have to remember that Russia has a very long list of demands here, and they don't really have any reason at this point to give up any of those demands, right? To concede and to say, okay, we'll do what Trump wants us to do, because Trump has not shown through the lifting of sanctions on Russia, which he hasn't done, or through the pulling back on military aid to Kiev, Trump has not shown that the U.S. is ready and willing to get out of this war. And I think that that is going to prove to be a major mistake on his end, because when Trump came into office, he had the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm lifting the sanctions, we're getting out of Ukraine, we are not going to be complicit in this. This was Biden's war. But the deeper that Trump gets into this, the more he makes it now Trump's war. That goes for the bombing of the Palestinians in Gaza, and it goes for the targeting of the Russian people in this ongoing proxy war that is still being carried out.
Rachel Blevins, as always, a pleasure to talk with you and an education too. Thanks for joining us. Rachel Blevins, journalist and political commentator. Do follow her. You won't regret it. A quick break, and then it is the legendary Abdel Bari Atwan, writer, commentator and editor-in-chief of Rai Al-Yum. He is the last Arab. Believe me, he'll be up in the next couple of minutes. Stay tuned. I don't believe that the mainland European countries give a toss about Britain, and I'm certain that the United States would not sacrifice itself for Britain. That's why I say Britain is completely marginalized. As for the Trident missiles, of course, if the United States, which has dual control over these missiles, gave permission for them to be launched, of course, they would incinerate Russian cities. But what good would that do us? Because we'd all be dead, including the people that fired the missiles. You feel me?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well over 30,000 people have voted now. Has Trump made the world a safer place? So far, on Telegram, 19% say yes, but on Twitter, on X, 39% say yes. On the YouTube community poll, 28% say yes, and on the YouTube stream, 20% say yes. So it's a fairly decent majority answering in the negative, saying no, he has not made the world a safer place, but with a decent showing of people who think he has. You've got about 15, 20 minutes max to get your vote in on that, on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Abdel Bari Atwan is a very long-standing friend of mine. He is from Gaza, from the refugee camps in Gaza. When we first met 40 years ago, we used to talk about how bad things were there. Well, Abdel Bari, they're a lot worse now than they were then. If it was agony for me to watch what happened in the week in Gaza, then of course it was very much more agonizing for you. Give us your view of what Netanyahu did and why he did it.
You know, Brother George, today, the number of genocide, Israeli genocide victims on Gaza Strip reached until now 50,000. About 25,000 of them are children. They were massacred by the Israeli bombardment of the refugee camps in Gaza. That's the problem. About 90% of the Gazan building and towers were destroyed completely. The problem is the Israeli resumed the bombardment of Gaza, and they did not respect the ceasefire agreement. And what they want, because they don't want to commit with themselves to a full withdrawal and to stop the genocide in Gaza. And what happened, they stopped all the human aids to the Gazan people, 2.25 million at least. Now they are starving to death. There is no electricity, there is no water, there is no food, there is no hospitals, there is no medical assistance, nothing at all. And I don't know why the international community is silent completely. What is happening to our people, to a human people in Gaza is, very, very dramatic, very, very, disrespect to the humanity. That's the situation now. People cannot find water, George. They cannot find water to drink. They cannot find water we are in Ramadan now, in order to wudu, to wash for praying there. This is the problem. And the Israeli cut everything. And in the top of that, the continuous bombardment. Today, more than 70 people were massacred by the Israeli. And, those people, they are in the tents. They were displaced from their places, from their even, refugee camps in the north of Gaza. And most of them living on the rubble of their destroyed houses. This is the situation. I cannot say more than that. It is written in the wall. But the problem is the international community, they don't care simply because the enemy is the Israeli, simply because the enemy is United States, who orchestrate all these kind of massacres and genocide in Gaza. And at the top of that, they are preparing the ground to actually displace, to kick out more than 2 million Palestinians from Gaza in order to make it the new Rivera, as Trump said about it. We don't want a new Rivera in Gaza. We want food. We want water. We want electricity. We don't want, to be another Singapore. No, we want to live like human being. That's all. Is it too much to ask to live normally like everybody on earth? Is it illegal to say that we don't want to leave our refugee camps? I'm not saying our heaven in Gaza, our refugee camps, which you used to call as open prison, George. Now it's not even over, and it's not open prison. It is a grave now. It is open grave to all the Palestinians there in Gaza. Well,
people will have been very affected, I think, by your opening remarks. I suppose if they recover in order to ask a question at all, it would be this: what happens next? What happened to the Arab peace plan? What happened to the United Nations? What happened to the Security Council? What happened to the European Union? What happened to all these countries that are supposedly committed to a two-state solution, of which Gaza is a part? How can they, just as a matter of logic, remain silent when a genocide is happening in the very part of Palestine that they have committed themselves to recognizing as a Palestinian state in a two-state solution?
George, let me tell you something which is extremely important. I don't know whether we talk about it together or not. They came to us, United Nations, United States, European, they said to the Palestinian, why should you fight with your enemy? You are not, strong enough to defeat the Israeli, to defeat the American. To go to negotiating table, try to be moderate, put the gun aside, and listen to the international community. And the PLO, Yasser Arafat, who you know, and he used to be a friend of you, George, he said, let us try the international community. Let us listen to them this time. They said to us, Israel was established by United Nations. So we must go to United Nations. He did go to United Nations. He did go to Oslo in order to strike Oslo agreement. He gave up 80% of Palestine, historic Palestine, in order to have a state on 20% only. And what happened? That, this agreement was signed in the lawn of the White House in September 1993. From 1993 until now, we did not have two-state solution. We did not have a Palestinian state. We did not have security. We had about 800,000 Jewish settlers on the West Bank, which is supposed to be the nucleus of the independent state. Nothing happened at all like that. And now we are facing the genocide, the ethnic cleansing on Gaza. When after the ethnic cleansing, which is actually deliberately done in order to kick the Palestinian out of Gaza Strip, to 2 million, to send them, sometimes they say to Morocco, some other time they say to Somalia, some also to Syria. We don't know what they are going to do with us. What are they going to do with our people? Why they want actually to kick them out? Why they want to settle them somewhere else except their land? The Trump is actually taking the people, illegal immigrants, away from United States. Why he wants to take the legal people? The legal people who were born and they lived for thousands of years in Gaza and the West Bank and Palestine. Why he want us to kick us out of our country? Why? This is the big question. He said he doesn't want war. He wants peace, as you said in your screen here. Why he wants peace everywhere, as he claimed, and he doesn't want peace but war. Genocide in Gaza. This is the big question. I wish I can face him. I said to him, what did we do to you as Palestinian? What did we do to United States as Palestinian? What did we do to Israel as a Palestinian? You took our land. You kick us out. And we are now refugees everywhere in the world. And we are not allowed to go back. And now who remain steadfasting in Gaza and the West Bank, they want to kick the West Bank people to Jordan and Palestinian people who are living in Gaza to Egypt, maybe to Somalia, maybe to Africa. God knows why they are doing this to us. I hope I can find a question about that.
Well, they're not going to be able to go to Syria, are they? Because Syria is fast disappearing in front of our eyes. Not only has Israel effectively annexed 3 whole provinces of Syria without a shot being fired against them in doing it, but the Turkish government has announced this evening that it is taking control of the area around Palmyra. And so it already has Aleppo as a Turkish city. There's no land left in Syria to resettle the people of Gaza, even if they were prepared to go there.
That's the problem. Look at Syria, what happened now. It is anarchy there. And you can see, Syria was established, as a secular state. Everybody to live together, all the sects to live together, coexist with each other. And now they sent, very, radical groups to Syria. Why are doing that? And look at what is happening in Lebanon now. The Israelis are bombing every day. They are bombing villages in Lebanon. So, and the international community, as I said, the sponsor of this ceasefire in Lebanon is the United States. The monitoring of this ceasefire in Lebanon is United States. But why they don't interfere? Israel, provoked this ceasefire about 1,500 times. And this is documented. And the United States knew about that. And why they don't move, and why they don't say to the Israeli, enough is enough? Why they don't say to the Israeli, look, you sign a ceasefire in Gaza. Why you don't respect this ceasefire and carry it out on the ground? Why you don't move from the first phase to the second phase and take off all your forces from Gaza? This is the problem. Now, look at Yemen also. We have to mention Yemen. Yemen is the poorest country maybe on earth. And despite that, now in this moment, the American, aircraft carriers are bombing Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. Why they are doing that? You are the United States, the strongest country on earth, to go to starving people in Yemen and bomb them? I don't know. Yeah, the problem is, there is no international community, there is no media, there is no journalists, there is no newspaper, there is no television to actually concentrate on this violation of human rights, this killing, massacres taking place most of the Middle East area. Now the most stable country in the Middle East are completely turned to a failed state because of the Israeli and because of United States of America. This is the problem. Americans are encouraging the dismantling of the whole Middle East, and also to prepare the ground for more radical organization, for more terrorism to take place, more death to take place. This is what is happening in the Middle East in a very short sentences.
Wow. Abdel Bari Atwan, writer, commentator, editor-in-chief of Ra'i Al-Yom. Thank you for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. We're running very short of time, so let me go straight to the lines. Zaya is in Montreal, but wants to talk about Palestine. Zaya, welcome.
Hi, George. How are you?
All good. Thank you very much. What do you want to say?
Okay. I want to definitely talk about Palestine because, the aggression, brutality, atrocity doesn't seem to have any end. It's, even a small ceasefire, then it's broken and there is nobody in the world, nobody basically can stop the brutality. That's the first thing. And secondly, I want to talk about Imran Khan in Pakistan as well.
Well, on the first, I think you heard from Abdel Bari, there is no international community, there is no international law, there is no international media, there is no nothing when it comes to the Middle East. Anarchy seems to be the only plan, and it's very difficult to see, maybe I'm too undereducated to see, how anarchy can lead to anything good in the Middle East, how it can produce anything other than a succession of broken Middle Eastern countries, and in despair, more and more people turning to fanatic extremism. Imran Khan, I don't know what the situation is now. I'm not, as you know, probably a party man of Imran Khan. I spent most of my life, best years of my life, at the side of Benazir Bhutto. So I'm not here making any party political plea for Imran Khan, but I do love Pakistan, and that love is total. And so for the sake of Pakistan, Imran Khan has to be released, and accountability for crimes that have been committed has to be seen, has to be done, and has to be seen to be done. If Imran Khan is not released, then Pakistan's governance will have no credibility. The forces of separatism now tearing lumps out of the federation in Baluchistan, and the forces of extremism, fanaticism, are only going to grow. Meanwhile, Pakistan, which should be booming, it's in the middle of a region that is booming. India is booming. China is booming. Pakistan, with its geostrategic place, should also be booming. It should be, Karachi should be the new Dubai, but it isn't. And Montreal should be, Lahore should be the new Montreal, but it surely isn't. Zaya in Montreal on Palestine, thank you very much. A big shout out now to tonight's top donors who've gone onto the website, MOATS.tv, since we came on air. Mariana Giorgi, Derek Chadwick, Desmond Rowntree, Finton Coyle, and Celso Aquino. A really huge thank you to you for your generosity. Please, after the show, check out MOATS.tv website and click the Donate Now button. Lee is in Middlesbrough and wants to talk about Ukraine. Let's go there to Middlesbrough. Lee, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm an awakened ignoramus, George. I was brought up on the media of the West, and I started looking into it. It doesn't take a genius looking back to the collapse of the Berlin Wall, to the promises made by Thatcher, Reagan, as you've discussed many times, to see that the eastward expansion of NATO onto the borders of Russia is an obvious encroachment and a breach of their security. Yet all we hear is the total stupidity of our government talking about war with Russia, when with the might of America, 50 other nations, and Russia not even being at a state of war, just a special operation, we haven't been able to push them back. In fact, they've been taking more and more of Ukraine. When will this stupidity end?
Well, you say that you are an engineer who was brainwashed by the media, but you've certainly shaken that off, Lee, because in a nutshell, that was as cogent a presentation of the exact case of the state that we are in. It was pretty near perfect. The promises that were made to Russia were broken. The encroachment of not 1 inch became an encroachment of thousands of kilometers. The encroachment began to take the form that previous invasions of Russia have taken. Napoleon invaded Russia through Ukraine. The Germans in the First World War invaded Russia through Ukraine. Hitler in the Second World War invaded Russia through Ukraine. So, as you say, you don't have to be a genius to work it out. I'm not an educated man, maybe you're not either, but we were able to work it out. The Russians have taken the view and they telegraphed it long in advance, as long ago as the Munich conference in 2008. Putin told everybody that up with this we will not put, and to coin a wartime phrase, not one step back. We will not take one step back on this question of NATO infiltration and then NATO membership, NATO weaponization of Ukraine, not one step back. Indeed, if Putin is criticized at all in Russia, where he has pretty near record levels of popularity right now, but if he's criticized at all, it's not by people who say he should never have acted on the threat through Ukraine, but that he should have acted on that threat very much sooner than he did in 2014, to be precise, when the government of Ukraine was overthrown in an explicit Western attempt to weaponize Ukraine against Russia. I mean, this is not rocket science. Nobody needs to take my word for it. It is testified ad infinitum in the public prints, in Victoria Newland's secretly recorded telephone calls and all the rest of it. This is not contentious, what I'm saying. So people say Putin should have acted in 2014. Having waited to 2022, he should have acted far more strongly in taking the velvet glove off this special military operation. People say it shouldn't be a special military operation. It is a war. Fight it like a war. Now, the vast majority of people are prepared to trust Putin with the statecraft that he has displayed over 25 years, and with Lavrov at his side, the world's greatest foreign minister at his side. People are minded to trust him to bring this ship in. But insofar as there's any criticism justified of Putin, it is that he waited far too late and has done far too little to bring this war to a victorious conclusion. We'll see what happens with Donald Trump's mediation. I'm not myself confident now, as I was, that this war is going to end anytime soon. And I think that the areas that will fall under Russian control are exponentially increasing. Ramplens01 says, no, Trump doesn't need to lift the Christians from Syria. What he needs to do is stop supporting the head choppers under the table. Well, to be fair, it's not actually Trump that's supporting the head choppers under the table. He has refused to lift the sanctions on the head choppers. It's good old Europe that has lifted the sanctions on the head choppers. Nikki A says Israelis burned and destroyed humanitarian supplies that were destined for needy and desperate Palestinians. What kind of people do this? Israelis. The Spartan says Trump and Biden are trapped on an island. Who survives? America. And Nathan Dunning says Trump uses Christianity as a tool for votes and support while being funded by the Israel lobby, where Christians are persecuted. And Jeff West says, why are the Yemenis the only Arabs with balls? Well, they're not, Jeff. Of course, the Palestinian resistance that have been fighting them against overwhelming odds are Arabs. The Lebanese resistance are Arabs. The Iraqi resistance are Arabs. But I know what you mean. Brian is in County Tyrone on Conor McGregor. Go ahead, Brian.
Good morning, George. You know, George, when you're talking about Christianity, you can talk about priests and bishops, but I'll tell you now, sir, you are the greatest Christian alive. You are. But anyway, George, I want to talk about this McGregor again. Hey, what is going on? Hey, walking around Washington, D.C., hey, he looked coked out, George. He didn't know what he was saying. What was going on? I think this man's compromised. I think Israel has something on McGregor. There's just something not right about that. I mean, he's trying to influence Irish politics because of Ireland's stance with Palestine, you know. So I just think the man's...
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, we know as much as we do about Conor McGregor, and it's not a pretty sight. So I'm not sure what worse he could have done that the Israelis would be holding as compromat over him. But one thing is for sure, he's taken the shekel, and his statements this evening are provocative in the extreme. He's running for president of Ireland, he says. Though whether he'll be able to stay out of jail long enough to do that must be a moot point, but he has issued a statement today that Ireland has to stand foursquare with Israel. Well, that's not exactly a vote winner in Ireland, neither north nor south. And so you can only assume that he's just committed a kamikaze self-harm attack on his own presidential run, which leads me to believe that it's not a serious run at all, though he'll probably be able to lift a lot of shekels from the gullible to fund it. Brian, thanks for the call. Latifa is in London, and she wants to talk about the Muslim leaders, I wonder who they are, and the boycott. Go ahead, Latifa.
Hi, assalamu alaikum, Brother George.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
rahmatullah wa barakatuh. You have no idea how frustrated I am with what's happening, how sad I am. First of all, as usual, I'm so frustrated. Please bear with me 1 second. As usual, I want to thank you, first of all, for all your beautiful work over the years for Palestine and all the justice all around the world. Thank you. Sorry, George. For these Arab so-called leaders, Muslim so-called leaders, the solution for them to wake up, and remember the reality is first of all, we all know what happened to Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Bin Laden, and many more. They used to be friends to the West. We all know how that they finished. So these present leaders, they don't think they are immune to it. If they keep on this way, sooner or later they will feel the evil, or they will have their share of evil, of the Zionist evil firsthand. If they just stop...
go on.
If they just stop fearing the West and fear Allah, because, that hour, it will come sooner or later, and they will be accountable to God, and that will be for eternity.
I think they've long ago written that off, Latifa, and they must have done. With all their sins and all their crimes, they cannot possibly imagine that if there's a judgment day that they can pass through the gates of heaven. If they do think that, then the level of delusion is such that someone needs to take them away and lock them up in a padded cell. How any of these leaders could possibly imagine that the lives that they have led and the crimes that they have committed and the sins that they daily partake in, that they're going to heaven, I just don't believe that. So I think they have decided that they're going nowhere in the next life, and so they're going to enjoy this life themselves with all of its wealth and all of its hedonism and sin. They're going to, as it were, live for the day. That's the only conclusion I can reach. I did ask Abdel Bari Atwan what happened to the Arab plan. He didn't answer me because there is no answer, because nothing happened to the Arab plan. There is no Arab plan, and even if there was an Arab plan, the Arabs have neither the cohesion, the commitment, nor the leadership to bring it about. When I see that Egypt is the driving force of this so-called Arab plan, I think of Gamal Abdel Nasser. I think of the lion that was Nasser in Cairo. I think to myself, what would he have said? What would he have done? How would he have rallied the Arab masses from the Atlantic to the Gulf? This tower of strength that was Gamal Abdel Nasser. And then I look at what's there instead, and quite frankly, I despair. As clearly you have despaired, Latifa, I wish you a blessed last 9 days now of Ramadan, and to all of those who are fasting and observing this blessed month, I wish you every happiness and success, though it will be difficult. My good wife joins me now. Gayatri is in the studio with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Long live the memory of Abdel Nasser. He was a comrade and close friend of Indonesia's first President Sukarno, and was one of the main participants in the Bandung Conference, the Asia-Africa Conference.
It's the anniversary.
Which anniversary it will be this year. Big event, and the BRICS is some form of it, not quite, but it was very big at the time. Not quite as good. Sticking to Latifa's very moving call, I want to mention this comment from Morn's Lad. He says, George, you may ultimately lose everything before this war with the evil in our midst is over, but you will gain eternal soul, which is the reverse from the Bible verse in Matthew saying, for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but forfeit its soul?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to gain the whole world, and I don't have very much to lose in any case, but I'd far rather have a better chance on the last day of eternal life than to burn any possibility of that for wealth and power here in this life. That's just me.
Well, His Holiness Pope Francis has been released from hospital after being there for 2 months.
God strengthen him.
Amen. So he has gone over the worst of his pneumonia, and he made his first public appearance from the hospital balcony. And he must have been shocked to find out upon his release that Gaza is being bombarded again and children are being massacred in the ugliest form. So one of his first tweets was in regards to that, urging the return to the ceasefire and as we would more.
You know, he was phoning Gaza every single night at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Every single night, the Pope, even from hospital, he was phoning the Church of the Holy Family in Gaza every night and speaking, not just to the priests, but to the congregation, to the faithful people there, every single night. He never forgot them. And a lot of people hate the Pope. I don't quite know why. I'm not, I suppose, big enough interested in the internal ecclesiastical, theological arguments that they have with him. But one of the reasons why they hate Pope Francis is that he loves the people in Gaza.
He's a revolutionary, amongst them, that's for sure.
Bit like Jesus was. Sorry.
Sticking to the religion, as you mentioned, is the last week of Ramadan, and this year it somehow coincided with the Christian Lent, which is something to be celebrated. As you know, I joined the kids when they went to the church, to the Catholic Church for Ash Wednesday. But then this week came this row where a primary school in England became the center of this controversy after the head teacher announced that Easter is cancelled. And you commented on that and received even more headache and controversy on it. And it's not obviously the first time that they're trying to make a thing out of this. They have cancelled Easter and the Easter bonnet parade in particular for the sake of diversity. And instead, they will embrace and celebrate Refugee Week instead.
I mean, it's almost as if this is a planned provocation. Cancelling Easter and replacing it with Refugee Week. It's almost as if it was a provocation planned by those who wish to cause even deeper division in our society, even greater interreligious discord, even hatred. And a useful liberal white idiot of a school teacher, headmistress, has been found to carry out the provocation.
Yeah.
And actually, when you drill down, as you and I have both been doing today, no Muslim ever asked for Easter to be cancelled anywhere, or Christmas for that matter. It's white liberal idiots that call for, in the name of diversity, these ancient festivals and part of the British national heritage, that they should be cancelled in the name of diversity. It's not the minorities that are asking for this. It is the white, liberal, useful idiots that are doing so. And when I made clear in that tweet that they just put up on the screen there, that it is completely unacceptable for Easter to be cancelled in any school in Great Britain, and the government has a responsibility to ensure that Easter and Christmas retain their essential place in the cultural, never mind religious, forget religion for a minute, in the cultural and historical architecture of our country. Unless we've given up having a country, unless we've given up being a country. Maybe that's what some of them like. You know, the country in the West and the world is divided between somewhere people and nowhere people. And the nowhere people don't care where they are. The only religion they worship is the Benjamins, the greenbacks.
They believe in the prophets, not the prophets.
Oh, well said.
Including Jesus, who's revered by Muslims as well. And
well, this is the irony. Why would Muslims ask for Easter to be cancelled? It is mandatory for a Muslim to love Jesus. Mary is mentioned more times in the Quran than she's mentioned in the Bible.
Correct.
Why would any Muslim want to disrespect Jesus? It's a ridiculous idea, but it's taken hold.
Dangerous.
And people like that idiot, the headmistress of that school, have a heavy responsibility for it.
Very dangerous waters we're turning into. The polls asking, has Trump made the world a safer place? Well, you know, in the 1970s, when President Kissinger asked the Chinese leader Zhou Enlai about the French Revolution, and he famously answered, well, it's way too early to say. Trump has only been in office for 63 days during his second term.
That's a fair point.
In total, if you want, in total, including his first, it's 1,460, but still, it's way too early to tell. Rancho Deluxe says, just talking to the Russian makes the world safer. No doubt. I understand why hoity-toity UK liberals are pissed off about it. They want me to fight Russia for them, but I have no such interest. And Komplowski says, no, but how do you make a madhouse safer? Anybody in this place is like heavy-duty excavator in a china shop full of mentally unstable porcelain. There will be a lot of shells crumbling. Let's continue to watch which ones are going down on purpose and which are collateral. Such a good metaphor.
That's the tweet of the night.
Is.
What a metaphor. Brilliant. I wish I'd said that. I will. There's a legend on the line, Gayatri.
Yes.
We have to make way for Erobos in New York on Iran. Erobos, welcome to the show.
Greetings and salutations, Mr. G. Of course, to you, your family, the wonderful MOATS staff, and the brilliant Gayatri Galloway and her karate gi. She's probably 3 times a black belt. I wouldn't be surprised. I actually thought about her chasing Keir Starmer down with some Muay Thai, right? The science of 8 joints. If you know what Muay Thai is, well, you know how that will turn out. In any event, just a small distraction. I disagree with Rachel on the idea that America is not ready for a woman president. What America, in my view, is against is having a warmonger, a depraved genocidal maniac in a skirt, which is what Kamala is. You know, and Jill Stein, you know, she was hamstrung by the green identity and identity politics. The green identity is fundamentally anti-worker. So that's why she failed. But she did succeed in Michigan, which was the point of going there. Just to move on, because time is always against us. The Iran nuclear weapons, the whole hullabaloo around it, it's both a red herring and a straw man at the same time. And even analysts that know better, like the Duran, which I follow daily because MOATS doesn't have a daily program as of yet, you know, pay homage to those who can to MOATS and support, by the way. Continue on. You know, Israel, as you already know, anywhere from, they don't even know how many weapons, nuclear weapons, Israel has because they're not allowed to be inspected, right? They never signed any proliferation agreement. They could have 80, they can have 400, they can have 4,000. You know, and these people, including analysts that know better, like Scott Ritter and the Duran, they all peddle the same pro-American point, this alarmist point, which is ridiculous, that, you know, it's not destabilizing the region, that Israel has all these nukes and they're genocidal monsters. and Holocaust maniacs. That's not destabilizing the region. Nobody's calling for the removal of Israel nukes, but just a conversation about Iran having nukes. And as I've stated before, I think they have them. You don't need a nuclear weapons program to have nukes. So I think they have them already. Whether they use them or not, hopefully it doesn't come to that. But it's patently ridiculous, and it's Orientalist, right? I'm not an enemy of Alexander Mercouris or Alex Christoforou, but they both harp on this point, and it sounds Orientalist, right? Like the whole children of a lesser God thing that you always speak about, that these people are how dare they, fight for themselves, how dare they have nuclear weapons, they should just be dictated to in the Sykes-Picot mentality. So it's a garbage narrative, and I'm just pushing back against it, and I'm thankful for the time. More powers and blessings to nukes. And shout out to Jaya. Wonderful, wonderful, beautiful Jaya.
Thank you very much indeed, Erebus, for your kind words for both Gayatri and myself. I made my own position clear. If I was the leader of Iran, I definitely would already have nuclear weapons. And I did say that they may well have nuclear weapons. Given that their levels of highly enriched uranium are such that they could, if they wanted to, make nuclear weapons, according to United States sources, may or may not be exaggerating, they could make nuclear warheads in a matter of days. And if I had 2 American aircraft carriers sitting off my coast, with Israel openly threatening to attack me, with the United States attacking Yemen next door and saying that any action by the Yemeni resistance, the Yemeni armed forces, will be treated like it came directly from Iran. What are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to do? Think of it in personal terms. Heavily armed men are all around your house and openly threatening you. What are you going to do? I'll leave it at that. Erebus in New York from Gayatri and me. Big thanks to all of you for watching. It's a very big audience tonight. And my apologies that not enough of you got through on the telephone. That's because we had 3 guests. We thought that all 3 were justifiable in these extraordinary circumstances. But we'll be back to 2 guests, God willing, on Sunday, and therefore there will be more of you able to get through. Did I mix up Wednesday. Sunday and Wednesday, which I do every week? Just as well she's here to correct me. On Wednesday, 7 o'clock, at the same time, same place. Be there.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.